he is tarnishing the brand.
Being married to a criminal has some major downsides for Nicki Minaj.
Street dude. Be a street dude.
Lately, everyone is talking about that, including Nick Cannon.
Street dudes didn't even get on the phone. Like real gangsters moving silent.
He threw some shade at Nicki's husband, Kenneth Petty, on his podcast. And if Nicki actually listens to what Nick said about her marriage, it could change her life. Kenneth and Nicki have been married for years now, and most people still can't see what she sees in the guy. Every time his name appears in a headline, it's never for anything good. And honestly, he just seems to be constantly dragging his wife's name through the mud. Just when you think he can't get any lower, he always seems to find a way. So it's getting super tiresome, and I feel like we're all just over it, including a bunch of celebrities who actually know Nicki personally and still have no problem publicly sharing what they think about her husband. And someone who's often talked about just how much he admires and respects Nicki is being especially vocal about it. Nick held nothing back on his podcast, Daily Cannon. In one of the episodes, he and his co-host talked about Kenneth and his most recent attention-grabbing scandals that have once again landed him in trouble with the law.
Street dudes didn't even get on the phone. Like real gangsters moving silent.
For anyone who somehow missed Kenneth's latest run-in with the law, he's been placed under house arrest for acting like a fool. And by that, I mean he and his friends were live streaming on Instagram while standing opposite a building they thought Offset was in. They were threatening to take his life because they had beef with him.
It's all fun and games till we want to play too. We out?
TMZ got a hold of the court documents that said that Kenneth violated his probation by making threatening remarks while in the company of someone with a criminal record. And his actions have warranted ridicule from everyone in the entertainment business weighing in on the topic. Nick made the comment that if Kenneth was a real gangster, he should act like real gangsters who move in silence. But he and his co-host also made another really good point, something that Nicki should really consider. They talked about how Kenneth's antics not only affected his own life, but also his wife's.
I believe what Courtney is saying is
they weren't wrong to say that Kenneth was bad for business. Nicki has worked so hard to create her legacy of being rap royalty. I mean, we all have so much respect for her as an artist, but I think we can all agree that her husband is negatively affecting her image, and that he is slowly undoing all the hard work that Nicki did in order to get to the top. At this point, Kenneth is just a joke to pretty much everyone. Nick and his co-host were making fun of his house arrest. It must be seriously humiliating for Nicki. So let's just hope that she really hears what Nick is saying and that she considers the effect her husband is having on her life and on her brand. Like I said, it's not just Nick saying this kind of stuff. In fact, he was actually echoing something similar that Charlamagne the God was talking about on the Breakfast Club podcast.
You may not care about how this video impacts you.
Charlamagne thought that Kenneth's stint was so ridiculous that he crowned him with his trademark dishonor, Donkey of the Day. He genuinely just couldn't believe that Kenneth was still trying to get street cred at his age, and he pointed out that they were both 45 years old, but that Kenneth was not acting like it. Charlamagne also made the observation that Kenneth had a privilege that few people had. He was married to one of the richest and most successful women in the world, but instead of using the opportunities that come along with marrying someone with a lot of wealth and power, he was tarnishing his wife's reputation and being a letdown in his community. The whole thing was just so embarrassing. Kenneth and his friends hadn't even checked where Offset was at the time. They were just guessing that he was in New York and hoping that he'd come outside the building they thought he was in, supposedly so that they could confront him. Offset had the last laugh though. If Kenneth and his friends had done a little research, they would have seen that Offset was live streaming earlier that same night while he was in Atlanta. And while the group of friends were telling Offset they were outside, he was actually flying on his private jet. It was only once the plane landed and he checked his phone that he saw what happened. So he threw some major shade back at the guys by posting his own video in which he was getting off his plane and laughing at them. But while everyone may be laughing at Kenneth, people don't find it as funny that he's making Nicki look bad. Like I said before, Nick really thinks that Nicki is insanely talented, which is probably why he was so disappointed that her reputation was being affected by her husband's behavior. He's been very open about how much respect he has for Nicki. On the Bootleg Kev podcast, he didn't shy away from giving Nicki all the praise. When the host announced that Nicki was the female GOAT, Nick was quick to make sure that she wasn't underrated.
Nicki is a GOAT whatever her gender is.
No, for sure.
Nick didn't stop complimenting Nicki there though. He also added that she was dope and that only Lauryn Hill or Missy Elliott had that same level of talent. Eventually, Nick's quote made its way back to Nicki herself, and she responded by reposting it with lots of heart emojis to express her appreciation for the high praise. So it makes sense that Nick's a little concerned about how it looks for Nicki that she has a husband who's getting attention for all the wrong reasons. He knows that she is worthy of all the fame and glory she's gotten over the years, but her name is being tarnished by being associated with Kenneth. I mean, let's not forget the reason why the guy was on probation in the first place. I'm telling you, it's just been one insane thing after another with this guy. He failed to register as an offender when he moved from New York to California, which is a crime that is punishable by up to 10 years of jail time. So he actually got off lightly with a sentencing of 3 years probation. Originally, he wasn't allowed to leave California and even had to turn in his passport. And if you don't already know why he is considered an offender, then be prepared to be shocked, because it's honestly unbelievable. When he was 15 years old, Kenneth did something unspeakable to a teenage girl that he knew, Jennifer Huff. According to court records obtained by The Blast, he reportedly pressed an object against Jennifer's back as she was on her way to school. He then made her walk to his home, where he allegedly attempted to force himself on her while threatening her with a sharp weapon. Eventually, she managed to escape and report what had happened. Jennifer has since confessed that the incident traumatized her for life. Kenneth was sentenced to 18 to 54 months in prison and ended up serving 4 years behind bars. But Jennifer wasn't left in peace after he got out. Kenneth has since wanted to get his name removed from the New York's offender registry, and Jennifer has claimed that she's received threats from people allegedly connected to Kenneth to try and get her to take back her accusation. It got so bad that she eventually filed a harassment lawsuit against him in 2021, which is still ongoing. And just recently, Jennifer's legal team even got hold of the court records from the original case back in 1994 to use as evidence in the latest lawsuit. So it seems that Kenneth's legal troubles are just never ending, and it doesn't look like he's making an effort to avoid causing more problems, even though he's making his wife look bad too. So let's see if Nick's latest comments get back to Nicki, and if she'll consider what he said, question how her life could be really different without Kenneth. But anyway, what do you guys think about all this? Do you agree with what Nick and Charlamagne said about Kenneth? If Nicki ever had to choose between Kenneth or her career, what do you think she'd pick? Let me know in the comments below.